So basically, I'm going to present this paper through the lens of an application. But since this is a theory talk, I thought that it would be nice to give you like a 2-minute overview of the methodological, conceptual innovation of this project.
By the way, did we already hear this a year ago, but from Daniel, or was it something similar?
So I asked Evgeny, and he said that you did it. So
maybe he presented something similar about the dating and stuff like that.
Well, this is the first paper in the literature about dating, and if you have a paper about dating, then
Wow.
Probably this one.
I should get myself checked then.
We checked what Daniel presented and what this paper.
So I have another co-author who presented another Fershtman matching paper here, I think a year or two ago, but it was a different paper, not about dating, about say course reasoning and internal self, maybe something like that. I don't know. If you have it, tell me, and I'll try to switch to another paper. I can try.
די, אני חושב שמי תתחיל לא בסדר.
I don't know. I'm sure how this one. Anyway, so this is going to be a Fershtman matching paper, and I don't know how familiar you are with that literature, but basically think of a marriage market, non-transferable utility of a set of men, a set of women, men want to marry women, women want to marry men. And the basic idea in that literature is that random meetings, and when a man and a woman meet, well, they immediately observe each other, they observe all properties and know the payoff that they are going to get from marrying one another. In this project, it's not a single paper, but going to be two, hopefully 3 papers from this project. We incorporate the following idea. When a man and a woman meet, they don't know exactly the payoff that they are going to obtain from marrying one another. And we allow them to acquire information about it, to learn about the quality of the match. We call it dating. Essentially, the man and the woman can spend time together. And when they spend time together, they learn about the quality of the match. Now, the thing is that we are assuming, all of the papers in this project, that dating is mutually exclusive. Perhaps not a good description of the dating market. We will call it in France, it's not how the dating market works, but we think that it's a good approximation. And with mutual exclusiveness, with the fact that you don't meet other singles while you're dating someone, you get a new trade-off that arises, the trade-off between learning about your compatibility with a specific partner and searching for other, perhaps more promising potential partners. So this is a new trade-off, and if you'd like the methodological contribution of this project, this paper, this is the more theoretical. But today, everything will be through the lens of an application. The application will be essentially segregation in marriage. So let me start with some motivation. If you think about intermarriage, namely marriage between partners for different ethnic or racial background, I don't think of racial background. I think about blacks and whites. Okay. If you think about intermarriage, the approval rates of intermarriage have soared since 1967. Nowadays, 94%. Why 1967? Because in 1967, all remaining rules that prohibited such marriage were cancelled in the US.
94% of the entire population.
Yes. Approval rate.
Yes, the blacks are 12%. So it means that it's 50% of blacks are objective.
50% of
So the blacks in the US are approximately 12% of the population. It's 94%.
overall.
So it could be that the 6% are
Potentially, but I mean, could be, but I don't think that this could be. I mean, this is according to Gallup's. Gallup have their survey every year. Do you approve of intermarriage? Now you could say, well, maybe not. I approve,
but they don't have a breakdown according to ethnicity or racial background.
So I think that they do have it, but the approval is not there. I don't remember the exact numbers. I can look if we have some references, but I don't think that there's a major difference. That's why we started.
Approval rates is a survey that
Yeah.
asks people.
Do you approve of marriage between black and white, between Asians, whites, Asians and blacks? These are the three.
Great preferences movement.
I'll show you in one slide. So the approval rates of intermarriage are so. Now, if you look at the past 20 years, the way people search for a partner has changed. Nowadays, you don't have to meet your partner at the supermarket or college. People now meet online. In fact, I don't know if it's 2019 or 2020, but 2019 or 2020, more than 50% of the newlyweds have met online. I'm part of that statistic. I mean, I didn't get that in 2019, but I met my wife online. Things have changed. And this made it easier to meet partners from diverse families. But still, if we look at the real world, the intermarriage rate remains relatively low. In orange, you have here the hypothetical intermarriage rate. Hypothetical in the sense that this would be the intermarriage rate if marriage would be random. Right?
That's from 4, I can see it from 4% to 12 to 19.
19.
That's a lot.
Yes, but demographic changes can explain more of this. There are more blacks nowadays than there used to be 50 years ago. We also thought that this is a nice increase, but then we look at demographics and demographics can explain it. So I'm not going to show regressions and stuff, but you can explain all this increase by demographic changes. Anyway, 19% low enough. So, why is interracial marriage uncommon? One potential reason is bias. Now, people are racist. It could be explicit bias or maybe implicit bias. I didn't say that they're not racist, but they are. Could be. By the way, the mechanism that I'm going to present today is going to work in world with bias, world with racist.
Why do you assume they see them instead of attraction? They attract to their kind of people. It's not specific.
Well, just another way of saying it.
No, if someone likes blonde women, doesn't mean he's racist in some way.
Could be. Anyway, we're going to conclude.
It has to be segregation.
Has to be what, sorry?
Has to do with segregation.
With segregation. In what
Black
state?
neighborhoods, white neighborhoods, that's what they're very black and white.
This is the case, and the change in search technologies was supposed to reduce segregation.
Right, but this has nothing to do with freedom.
It's not going to be the explanation that we're on, so I'm not going to really die on this here because
Have to do with the development of preference.
could be, but I'm not going to die on that here because in our model there will be no bias. I can tell you that the mechanism that I'm going to work in a world with bias, and I'm going to argue that our findings are consistent with real world data, and I'm not sure that a model that is based on bias would be consistent with these findings. But I'm not going to die on that here because today I'm going to show you a model of search, matching, and learning. Learning is going to be essential dating. And I'll show you that segregation occurs when agents search data and marry optimally, even when there's no implicit or explicit bias. Now, what's going to be the mechanism? I'll tell you in short. That way, obviously, later. In our model, couples date before they marry in order to learn about the match quality. We're going to assume assumption is based on a huge trend of the statistical discrimination literature that starts with Phelps paper in 1972. We're going to assume that evaluating partner from a different background is more difficult, it's more noisy than evaluating a partner from your own background. And when I say background, I mean racial background, ethnic background. As a result, in our model, agents are going to invest more time in dating partners of similar background. Now, what do I mean by invest more time? It means that when I date some woman, if I don't get positive indication, we share the same background, I'll be willing to spend more time with her before breaking up with her. And she'd be willing to spend more time with me before breaking up with me. This is going to be a result. And because of that, willing to give more chances to people of my own background, then obviously I'm going to be more likely to marry agents of my own background.
The second one is disclosure. You elaborate on
This one. Yes, this is the key assumption here. Okay? When I show you the learning technology, you will see how we incorporate this. There are many reasons. So Phelps was the first one to bring this idea into mind. It's more noisy to evaluate someone from your own parents. It takes more time. Now,
So what the Eagle said, segregation. You don't know people.
segregation is the result. So you could say that it's because we don't know their habits, we don't know how we interpret stuff. Yes, there are many cases. Actually, there are many papers, each of them suggests a different reason. I'm not going to. I could show you the literature review and go over all the statistical discrimination literature. Basically, there are two strands there. One starts with Phelps, the other one with arrow. Arrow is bias here. Phelps, the idea of learning, interpreting people from different backgrounds. Many reasons. Could be language, could be the interpretation of habits. Many reasons. We're just going to take it at face value and assume that it takes more time to evaluate someone from a different background. Right? In the model, it's not going to be related to language or habits, not going to get that.
It takes more time, and then you say that the people are willing to stay longer when it should take less time. So that's not necessarily consistent. I mean, depends on.
Well, I'll show you the model and
Yes,
the model
but-
is critical. So invest more, maybe time. But I didn't say invest more time, right? I don't like to say invest more. You will see in what sense invest more, but let me give you a small spoiler. At the belief that you will break up with someone from a different background, you're willing to give an additional chance to someone of your own background. That's what I mean by investment. Okay, when I show you the model, things will be clear, I think. I didn't say invest more time because it's not necessarily more time. It's more if you think about information acquisition. You get more information. Okay, so basically, we're going to study segregation today. So the mechanism I told you about will lead to segregation in equilibrium. Then I'll talk about segregation and social welfare. I'll try to argue that, well, if there are changes in the market that improves everybody's welfare, then you should expect more segregation. And then I'll go back to the initial motivation, improvement in search technologies. If they improve everybody's welfare, we get more segregation. I'll try to argue that if they improve, even if not everybody's better off, they will lead to more segregation and to a phenomenon that in the popular media is called the dating apocalypse. I elaborate on that. If we have time, I'm not sure. We'll see, depending on how many questions you ask. We'll talk about sorting, which is perhaps the biggest question in this kind of the literature, and I'll talk about consistency with empirical findings, and maybe at the end I'll talk about equilibrium system. It's not trivial in these models. We have equilibrium system, otherwise I'm planning here, but we might get it. Not sure. Okay. So that was a relatively short introduction, I think. Let's talk about the model. So we have a marriage market, set of men, set of women, and we have non-transferable utility. Okay? The market operates in continuous time, and there's this our agents are characterized by two attributes, except for their sex, men and women, but each of them is characterized by two additional points. First, there's the agent's attractiveness. Now, I'm going to call it attractiveness, but we interpret attractiveness as an observable model. We think about income and education. When I talk about consistency with empirical finding, this is going to be relevant.
Is it subjective or?
Objective. It's a vertical model.
So everyone thinks that this person is.
Everybody agrees that Meghan Markle is the most attractive woman in the world.
Come on.
Sorry. No, on that hill, I'm willing to die. In the other paper, this could be Juliet. No, in our paper, it's many of that. But we
The royal family.
all right. So this is attractiveness. Attractiveness is distributed on the unit interval. It's according to a continuous density. The second attribute is the agent.
Is this really crucial? Can you get it the same results for one?
without vertical heterogeneity.
And it's that, maybe for a couple
Well, for some of the results, yes.
It seems to me that what makes this whole search thing so hard is that it is subjective. I mean, if everybody knows that, what am I looking for?
So if you look at this trend of the literature, essentially accept this paper and I don't see Adachi here, but it should be.
2003.
Exactly, Adachi, here it is. Except for these two papers, this paper is just a critical of this paper, except for these two papers, in all of these papers, it's just vertical heterogeneity, so no horizontal heterogeneity at all. And in these two papers, it's just horizontal.
But
So,
just, are they also trying to figure out, is it for all these search papers as well? Are they trying to figure out?
all of them are search and matching, and the main question you have it. I have.
Look, the reference.
Let me give you a literature. You know what we got here? Maybe it's not a bad idea. I thought about it. Yeah, but why not? You know what? So basically, if you look at the marriage market literature, it starts with paper 1973, 1974, two papers in the JPE, no search frictions. The literature on search and matching with emphasis on the marriage market started in roughly 1991. So you have Mama Collins, they are not economists. And you had like Bill papers, Bertram and Bernoulli, Morgan in mid 2006, it's essentially a working paper from 1992. And I said, now, Bloch and Leiden and Baudet, of course, all these papers came out together. Essentially, they found that an equilibrium exists. You know that, of course, a steady state equilibrium is a little bit more demanding. I will show you later. All these papers talked about how the equilibrium looks like. After that, Smith 2006, Shannon and Smith 2000, and Atakan 2006. Atakan came in to talk today in Tel Aviv. By the way, you guys are you're under siege, so you cannot get it in Tel Aviv today. Anyway, all these papers are now papers by Boradon and Salman talk about sorting, vertical heterogeneity. So the rich marry the rich, the poor marry the poor, and the main interest in sorting in that strand of the literature could be questions by later, but at least when people try to motivate it, they talk about inequality. Right? The rich marry the rich and the poor marry the poor, then in cases inequality. So this is a broad overview of this literature, except for two papers. Everybody talks about vertical heterogeneity. Is it because it's stylistic? The answer is, to be completely honest, probably no. Would things work in our model without vertical heterogeneity? The answer is that some of the results would, and I'm happy to think about each result and to tell you separately whether this would hold or not. And we have 8 propositions in the paper, and telling you now that, well, 2, 3, 5, and 7 would hold, and the rest wouldn't. I think that this is a little bit uninformative, so I won't do that. Yeah, I think that this is what I have to say about the matching with the search friction literature. Maybe if I get to a literature review, I should say that, except for this paper, all other papers in this literature assume that when you see a potential partner, you know exactly the birth that you're going to get when you're married to the partner. And in that paper, you still have to make a decision, even though you don't know exactly how much you're going to get. And, that paper is like, well, winner's curse. Well, I know that if someone is willing to marry me, then it's highly likely that I got two positive signal about that person's life. So that's the idea in 2001. Not even close to what we're. All right, so questions about the literature. Oh, I should go back to our model.
This is just the economics literature, right?
Well, McNamara and Collins, not really economics, but what other literature?
Outside economics, there are whole libraries of that.
Well, in sociology, yes, but the approach there is very different. You won't see theoretical modeling. If you want to think about the real world, so most of our knowledge about the real world is from a book by Johan Weiss, Antler, I hope I'm pronouncing his name well, and Brown. There are other approaches, we are aware of that, but we are economists, so there are some motivations from other literatures, but maybe if I would give a behavioral paper now, I would say other things, but at least our approach here is approach of an economist. All right. So, marriage markers, agents are characterized by two observable properties, attractiveness and background. And whenever it's possible, I'm going to assume that there's symmetry between men and women. I know in the real world it's not symmetric, and symmetry between different groups. I know in the real world it's not symmetric. Do we need symmetry? The answer is no, but it's going to simplify it. So this is just a simplification.
Symmetry in what? In G?
Symmetry in G, if you think about different backgrounds, symmetry in G, if you think about a different sex. And I'm going to assume that the mass of agents of each integration group is the same. So there's no minority or majority. We could work with minority and majority. It doesn't change anything, but it complicates the notation, it complicates the arguments. So I'm going to simplify things. Whenever it's possible to think about symmetry, I'm going to assume. Okay, so let's talk about pairs. In our model, all couples are either compatible or not. The flow value from marrying a compatible partner is normalized to 1, when the flow pair from marrying an incompatible partner is -2. And you're single, you get a flow pair for single. This
What
is
is
normalization, this is not.
Flow period, I don't know this.
You spend time with someone, each moment in time, you get the flow pair. It's continuous time.
Okay.
You spend a small unit of time with someone, you're compatible, you get 1, you're incompatible, you get 5.
This is the momentum utility minus 3 or 1.
Yeah.
Each moment.
Each moment.
And you might not know that you are not incompatible. You don't know your payoff in real time.
Yes.
You
I
don't.
mean, you could think of another way to think of this minus C. The problem is minus C, right? Know that you're married to a compatible partner or some problem. You don't want to resolve that. With minus C, it's kind of a problematic interpretation, but you could change this and assume that well, you get all your utility upon separation or a random moment in time where you learn that it's minus C, you would get the same results. This is standard in the continuous time.
And there is divorce in your model?
Yes. I'm talking about.
So you take it into account when you
Yeah.
decide upon that.
Completely. Yeah, there will be divorce. Can't tell you everything in one time.
What does it mean with the probability increasing?
I'll get to that. I'll get to that. I didn't explain. First of all, compatible partner, you get a flow pair for 1, incompatible, you get minus C, and compatibility, and this is important. Right? You observe someone's background, you observe that person's attractiveness, you don't observe compatibility. Now, the prior probability that agents X and Y are compatible is Q naught, and it depends on the agent's attractiveness, not on their background. Now, I want to say a few things. First of all, the fact that it doesn't depend on background means that in the model, there is no preference bias. There will be some bias, but not preference bias. The second thing is that the probability depends on attractiveness. This is exactly the interpretation of attractiveness. More attractive people are compatible with the people who are more attractive and compatible with more people. On average, when you meet someone who's attractive, you're more likely to enjoy a relationship with that person. You don't know whether you're it's not like someone guarantees that I enjoy living with my partner, but it's more probable that I enjoy living with her than with I don't say my wife. Now, it is symmetric. Should be something that I will imagine it's symmetric and it is increasing in both arguments. So if one of us is more attractive, it's more likely that we be compatible. And yeah, I mean,
So to that, if I'm more educated, far more educated than my partner, I should enjoy more being with him.
if you're more educated, it's not that she'll enjoy more, it's more likely that she'll enjoy being with you. All happy marriages are the same.
That doesn't sound true. So for example, if you marry someone who doesn't know how to read, their probability increases with the enjoyment. That doesn't sound.
How many people don't know how to read?
No, but if you
The
have
point I'm saying is that below extreme.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, we got that criticism, and people say that we should interpret education as background rather than as attractiveness. Attractiveness should actually be wealth or income. So that's why. Sorry?
Why education should be part of the background and not the.
That's not. So people say that if you come from a different, so if you don't know how to read, you have a different background. It's more difficult for you to communicate with someone who's has a PhD. But so that's a possibility, and that's something that was great. When I talk about compatibility with the data, I will talk. Let me complete the answer and then. So when I talk about consistency with the data, I will interpret attractiveness as education. I take your points.
I just mentioned in education because it appeared in your slides.
I think that if you look at the way the US Census categorizes different education levels, you will see that actually the differences are not. It's not illiterate people and people.
People with PhD in physics and people with their undergraduate in general studies.
It's also that.
I didn't get why it's increasing the whole volume. So fix the problem. The more educated I am, the more she's compatible.
The more educated you are, the higher your income. Let's think about income, okay? The higher is your income, the higher is your wealth, it's more likely that you will have a happy marriage with that person. Think about it, there are less financial concerns. His life is happier. I don't know, I think.
Without money,
Equality.
that's how the meaning, right?
That's a thing. Keep in mind that it's probability, right? It's not guaranteed. It's not that if you have more money that people will be happier with you, but everybody. But a larger share of the population. I think that it's
not maybe you might be unhappy because
But the reasonable to assume that the difference matter. Can you be sort of in the same league as your partner?
I don't know. I don't my partner have more money.
And I'm not sure. If your partner makes much more money than you, then you have this kind of difference in power. Maybe in attractiveness it's more obvious that if someone is way more attractive than the other one, but kind of a question of what are they doing together.
But that's something that others
The same question arises with money.
Yeah.
That's the modeling assumption. I mean, we might disagree on interpretation, but this is what I'm going to say. So I'm not going to change. So
You wanted to topic, so we can assume something else.
right, it's the file, but if it's not, so in a sense, I think this is a very important. And so the file, if it's not increased in both arguments, then we don't have that kind of logic.
and the compatibility itself, not the probability.
The probability is compatible.
Yeah, is it the same for the two people in stuff?
Yes, yes. If I'm compatible with you, you're compatible with me. Yes. Yes, actually, this is not necessary.
It doesn't matter.
Well, it matters in the sense that rules become much longer, because if presentations, both of us learn about our compatibility, this is joint learning relative to the case in which I learn whether you're good for me and you learn whether I'm good for you, because then there might be some, maybe it takes more time to learn about me. And now I say, okay, maybe even if I learn that I like him, it will take him so much time that I'd rather not even start. So there are issues like that. I can tell you that things work, but it gets significantly more complicated. So, in a sense, this is the simplest model. Still, it has many moving parts, but this is the simplest model. Probably will be like that. So, yes, I completely agree that if you want to capture everything in the real world, we should complicate many things here, but it is complicated enough. I think for me, I don't know. All right, so it's a search and matching. So agents are going to make a random, there's no directed search. We're going to use a quadratic search technology. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that literature, but a recent paper, Slauman, Nodek, and Toder from 2020 basically said that if you get existence, and for the other results, it's not important, but if you get existence with the quadratic search, basically you can get existence with any reasonable search technology. So this is the small one. Let me explain what quadratic search means here. It means that if you're single, unmatched, single, and face a constant arrival of potential partners, that the rate mu represents the search technology. And you need to multiply by the measure of segregation. The normal singles, you're more likely to somewhere each moment of time. So if you think of a set of types Y, if the measure is P, then an agent on the other side of the market meets such agents at the rate U times. This means quadratic search. So the innovation in this model is that when agents meet, they don't have to immediately decide whether to marry or not. Typically, they have to decide either they marry the big market and you never get about them, or they both, or if one of them decides to reject the other, then both of them go back to the search group. In our model, agents can date before deciding whether to marry or not. And what do I mean by dating? Basically, I'm going to make three assumptions. First, dating requires mutual consent. This means that while a couple are dating, each of the potential partners can break up with the other at any moment in time, in which case they immediately go back to the search group. So again, I'm going to assume that dating is mutually exclusive. This means that while I'm dating someone, both of us, we don't meet other singles. We could relax that assumption and allow us to meet other singles at a lower rate. It's important that the rate will change because otherwise there wouldn't be a trade-off between dating someone and deciding to break up and meet singles at the best. The third assumption is more technical. We're going to assume that when you're dating someone, there's a flow cost of about social norms and about this small cost. The reason we're making this assumption is that without it, there's always an equilibrium in which dating is an absorbing state. Everybody dates forever, there are no marriages, and there's no reason to break up with someone because the market dries out because everybody's dating, nobody's married, nobody's single.
Because of this kind of factor for the marriage, you
do have, but if you're the only one in the market, so let's say that everybody decides to date other people for them. That's how we did it. Now let's say that I'm dating and I'm thinking, well, this guy will never marry me, and maybe I should break up with him and try to find someone else, but there's no one else because everybody is dated. This is kind of a silly equilibrium. We don't want to deal with that, obviously. So there's a small cost, small as you like. So what happens when a couple are dating? It should be a couple is dating, right? The language editor decided it's a couple are dating. Anyway, we're essentially borrowing simple learning technology from the strategic experimentation literature. We're going to assume that when agents X and Y are dating, The signal about their compatibility arrives at the rate lambda if they share the same background and are compatible. Beta lambda if they're compatible but not on the same background. And if they're incompatible, then the signal method. A few comments about that. First of all, this is the model of no news is bad news. Signal doesn't arrive, and over time we get more pessimistic. Now you could say, well, there are relationship breakdowns, right? This is kind of a nice click between us. We know that we're compatible, we can marry and everything, but sometimes you get into an argument and you want to break up into a problem. Can we incorporate this? The answer is, well, yes. But there's a but here. We could have breakdowns like negative signals, but only at a relatively low rate. What I mean by low rate? If the rate is not higher than lambda, then the model would remain a model of no news is bad news, and this is important. Second paper in this series is about an environment in which no news is actually good news, and things change there. That paper is not about segregation. Maybe enable to, like me or one of my colleagues, will talk about that. So we could have relationship breakdowns, but we must maintain the assumption that no news is bad news. The second thing I wanted to point out is that if a signal arrives, both partners know that they are compatible. There's no reason to continue dating, they just marry and leave them. Now, as I said before, we're going to incorporate the idea that it's more difficult to learn about agents from a different background, and we're going to do that by assuming that beta is smaller than A. Right, that's a key assumption. Questions about dating?
Is it crucial that dating has a cost? Because it kind of means that people are eager to get married. Maybe.
Not necessarily. It means that dating is costly. You don't pay that cost when you're single. But let me answer.
I can just avoid dating completely.
Yeah, for example. But let me answer your question. It is important in the sense that without that, you have this additional, I think, silly equilibrium.
Okay, that I got,
but if we put that aside, no, it's not.
Okay.
If we put that aside, this is an old remain from a world in which we thought about asymmetry in dating cost. It's more costly for one side of the market to the other, to the other side, and we were asked to take that out of the picture. The only role this assumption plays here is by concluding the equilibrium in which everyone dates everyone for it.
Can you just repeat on the quadratic search after I leave someone? How can I find the other one, the next one?
You meet people at random and take any set of types. Y, the other side of the market. Type means attractiveness and background. If their measure is 3, you meet them at the rate mu times. So mu is the search technology, say better search, faster search is higher mu, but we need to take into account how many agents are on the side.
It's a part of
It's going to be endogenous because the distribution of signal is going to be endogenous, but think of B as the equilibrium measure of agents with types.
I see, and the mu is the
Mu is a parameter, an objective parameter.
So there is nothing subjective in this search. Everyone is the same.
Everyone, they need the same. Yes. Okay. So what is the strategy here? Essentially, each agent has to decide how much time to spend dating every agent on the other side of the market without a positive indication. Right? If I date someone, if there's a positive indication, we just get married. The question is how much time I'm willing to spend with each of these agents. I'm going to denote it by px of y or py of x. Now this means that if you have a couple XY, they will wait for at most the minimum between TY of X and TX of Y. The signal life before that, they will get married. Otherwise, one of them will break up with the other and they will go back to the single school. Now, solution.
Each one knows its attractiveness parameter,
I know my attractiveness, I know my background, and
so it depends on your attractiveness, the time.
yes, of course. So, if I'm more attractive,
Attractive people are impatient.
yes, but I'm not going to work with times. I'll show you later. I'm going to work with beliefs rather than with times. So it's not exactly. Not exactly. More convenient, but it's not the same. This is why I was kind of, wait, did I say that the invest more time when you asked the question in the introduction? I was careful with my words. It's not invest more, but not more time.
And should it depend on background? No, because background has nothing to do with.
Well, TX of Y depends on background because I might decide to spend more time with more or less time with people of my own background and
On my own. Okay.
so
Yeah,
yes, of course, it may
but that difference between two backgrounds.
no, let's see that. Oh. So basically, there are two approaches in the literature. So solution concept is going to be a steady state equilibrium. What do I mean by steady state? I mean that agent strategies are optimal. This is kind of standard, and in this literature, it is typically distance per data equals 97. It assumes that the distribution of singles is consistent with the agent strategies. The old literature, there used to be a cloning assumption where people leave the market magically. People with the same attributes enter the market. This assumption was abandoned, except maybe Goldstone just won JP in 2019. That's the assumption. I don't know how it got into the JP, but that's a bit of it. Anyway, yeah, enough about it. So, in order to maintain a market, there are agents who are leaving the market. There are two approaches. One is Borden and Phelps, or Antler and Bucky. So, possibility, people are born and enter the market. There's an exogenous inflow. Another approach, perhaps more important people, Scheinman, Smith, Atakan, and so on. There are divorces. There's a mess of agents, and they are either single or married. And when you're married, you get a dissolution. So divorces occur as a random rate. Delta. By the way, it's possible to endogenize this delta. We're not going to do that, but it is possible to do that. So
divorce depends on compatibility.
no,
With that.
we could make it depend on compatibility. And if the referee will ask that, we will do that. But yeah, we're not righteous or holy.
Why not? I don't get it. If they realize that they are not compatible, they divorce, or they don't realize.
It never happens here because eventually knows the bad. So
Divorce is after marriage.
yeah.
You got divorced,
Oh,
and then you're married, and now you.
let's say let's say call it the one. We started dating. I've known this value. So we're going to marry after getting a signal. If we got a signal, we know that we're compatible. So
It's for sure.
for sure. 100%.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a signal.
Yeah. For inclusive signal. Okay.
Is divorce important for the model?
If you want to talk about the steady state equilibrium, you must have an input. Could we do that with birth, with exogenous birth? The answer is yes. Actually, what Laumann, Nolbeck, and Roger, super important paper. Basically, they show that search technology is not important, quadratic, linear, other variant, and the approach by Gaudet and Coles is essentially the same as the report by Scheinman and Smith and Smith. Not sure how to say it in English, but what they show is that it's about it's the same.
So because it's just new blood coming into the
Exactly.
system.
So I wanted to show you how the market does not die out. What assumption maintains.
But now I don't understand my own question. People who get married are compatible.
They are compatible.
Always.
But yeah, but think about, maybe there are properties that you don't know your partner's parenting style, or even kids, right? Don't think about marriage as marriage, think about it as having a kid together, right? You derive utility from that, but then, with some probability, you learn that the partner is a bad parent, maybe not the bad parent, but the parenting style is something that you can stand.
Alternatively, you could say that the signal is not 100%, it's not for sure.
We could say, yeah, it's a signal about funding.
That's what we say.
We could do that. It is possible to do that. Do I want to complicate the model? The answer is
For now, we take it as a given that for some probability they are the
yes.
they are the
Yes. Exactly. Okay, so steady state equilibrium, the distribution of singles, dating couples, and married couples must be consistent with the agent strategies. Agent strategies are optimal, and also they are stationary. That's the standard solution concept in the literature. We know very little about non-stationary world, and when I say very little, still unpublished, Bonaton and Sandman. Basically, what we know is that there are conditions under which it will exist. That's what
The distribution with density G plays no role in this one. We could assume
we could assume it's uniform.
it's a big one.
We need it to be atoms.
What?
Atomless. No atoms.
Yes, uniform is fine.
Yeah, uniform is fine. Okay. So now that we have a model, a solution concept, let's solve the model. Let's start with what I call the dating problem. Essentially, it's a single agent problem. This will help us understand everything. So let's say that we have an agent X, woman X, okay? And let's denote her continuation value while being single by WX. Let's say that woman X met a man Y. Okay, they have dated for T units of time. Now they will believe from Q naught to QT. By the way, Q naught is only a function of attractiveness. QT is a function of attractiveness and background because they spend together for T units of time, and if they share the same background, they learn more. They share different background, they learn less. Now I want to ask, what is the marginal net value of continuing? Is the belief that X and Y are compatible after spending T units of time together without observing scale.
And their belief is the same.
Yes,
Why?
the bio is the same, and we know that if we are compatible, we get joint learnings.
The signal is for both of them.
Yeah. Imagine that there is some click that occurs. Both of us observe the same click. I think that you asked it previously, could we, I'm not sure it's more general, but let's say generalize this and assume that I learn whether you are compatible with whether you're suitable to my needs and you learn whether I'm suitable for your needs. The answer is yes, but that would be significantly more complicated. We need to make additional assumptions for that.
It's not like usually. So the Q depends on X and Y, the real values. And the belief depends on what I know. And I don't know the effectiveness of the other guy.
You know that? Yes, attractiveness is observable.
And he's observed.
Yeah, attractiveness and background are observable, but compatibility is not.
Oh, okay, that's what I missed. Okay.
Okay. Oh,
Can you explain slowly the expression?
yeah,
I thought I needed.
no, you didn't miss it. I want to explain what QT. What I want to ask is, what's the marginal net value For woman, X,
But why Q should be in time?
at each moment in time, if we are compatible, the signal arrives at the rates lambda or lambda beta depending on background. So if we spend more time without the signal arriving, then we get more pessimistic. The longer time is spent, we should be more pessimistic. Okay. So what's the expression here is supposed to be, it is the marginal net value of dating man X or woman Y after they spend together the units of time. So what do we have? It's probability QT, they are compatible. If they are compatible in t units of time, a signal will arrive with probability lambda xy means lambda they share the same background, lambda beta is they don't. If a signal arrives, then they get married. They'll get married. This means that you get a capital gain. What's the capital gain? Here we have the float value of marrying a compatible partner. Given a life, I know they are compatible. And WS is the flow value of being single, and I'm sorry, it's the value of being single.
Or WS. What is that?
WS is
Yeah,
the
but
multiplication value
What is S?
when you're single.
Single.
Yeah, of a single, I can put it out by WS. The paper we also have WD because it's a continuation value of dating. It's just notation.
No, but it doesn't depend on time.
No, I don't think it's stationary. So if I'm single now, I get the same continuation value. Okay. One. Well, I'm in the middle of the. Okay. If I'm married to a compatible partner, I get a flow pair of one. Now, the capital gain is the difference between that flow payoff and the flow payoff while being single. The continuation value is WS, but if I want to change it to a flow payoff, I need to multiply it by the discount value. Okay, so essentially the difference in the flow payoff is 1 minus RWS. And to get the capital gain, I need to discount it, and I have to discount it by the discount factor and the exogenous probability of divorce, right? Because marriages, even between compatible partners, do not last forever. So this is what I get, but also there's a cost. Right? What is the cost? Of small cost of C. And in a different there's the opportunity value. Because if I were single, I could have met other singles in that between.
Why do you have to make some drug and the WS in both cases? Because you get this signal.
Here's the capital gain. This is I now have WS. Instead of WS, I'm going to get something else. This is what I earn. If I get married. But if I don't, even in case I wouldn't, I lose the possibility of being single for an additional period of time.
So while you're dating, you're not single.
While I'm dating, I'm not single. I don't need other people. Right? That's the mutual exclusiveness assumption. Okay. Now, no news is bad news. This is well known, which means that there's a unique solution to this problem. There's a unique cutoff belief such that this expression is positive above that cutoff and negative below that.
I have a question about when a couple meets,
Yeah.
they do the strategy test.
Yes.
They say what is the fact that they're going to quit. Do they know each other's plan?
Yes.
They meet, then they.
I met a very attractive woman. I know that no positive indication will arrive the next week. She will play out. Yes, I have.
But then you might want to change your time, but it's already too late. You're
No, you're not committed to anything, but note that, well, it will be the one slide, but even here, note that this is the marginal value of dating patient X for woman one. If X is very attractive, maybe X is going to break up with me in 2 days first. I'm asking myself whether I want to date X or an additional small unit of time. This is independent of whether X is going to break up with me in 2 days, 1 week, or a year. So actually, I don't have any incentive to change my behavior given that I know when you are going to break up. Now, this depends, the cautious assumption, this depends on the fact that no news is bad news. This is why I said that this is important. It is no longer true when no news is good. And because here, all I said is that we're asking ourselves whether X should date Y for an additional small unit of time. And Y's decision doesn't even appear, right? Now let me be a little bit clear. Now your intuition, I think, maybe I'm talking about your intuition, but at least what I think is your intuition is correct in the sense that excellent choice whether to continue dating Y is only relevant if Y chooses to continue dating. Right? Otherwise, not important at all. Now, this is also true in the conventional literature, right? Because when a couple meet, then the man's decision whether to accept or reject the woman is only relevant if the woman decided to accept them, right? So potentially you always have the equilibrium in which everybody rejects everybody. I reject you because I think that you will reject me anyway, so there's no reason. So my decision is not important. Now, clearly these are not the equilibria that we want to focus. So what do they do in the conventional literature? Basically, they assume that if you meet someone that the payoff we derive from marrying that person is higher than your continuation value, you say yes. Regardless of what you think that person will do. That's an assumption that appears in all the papers the list actually. Sometimes they slightly under the rug, sometimes they're more explicit about it, but it's in all these things, including biology. We're going to make an analogous assumption. We're going to assume that patients choose to continue dating. In doing so, it's profitable for them. Profitable in the sense that the marginal net value of dating is positive. If it is a good thing for me to continue dating with you, then regardless of whether I think you'll continue or not, I'll continue in mine.
It's like to say, and my belief is that you are going to continue, and then
There is at least a small probability that you'll. I don't even have to.
in this small.
At least it's small, right? Even if there are small trembles that will work, right? Because the only reason for me to break up with you that if I
The next moment, if you're going to continue, the next moment, that's enough.
yes.
Each moment.
At each moment, there's a small probability that you'll continue thinking. Yes.
I don't understand this. Why is this an assumption? Not
Because let's say that I believe that you'll break up with me tomorrow. Okay, and dawn rises, then I have to decide whether I want to continue dating. Now, if I think that you're going to break up with me for sure, my decision is irrelevant. So we sustain an equilibrium in which I tell you, look, I don't want to continue dating you. And the only reason I do that is because I think that you'll break up with me. But I think that
it can't be for sure because I may get a positive signal soon. How can it be for sure?
you mentioned that this would be a discrete time and not continuous time, okay?
Okay.
Each moment we wake up, we decide whether we want to continue dating. If both of us say yes, we get the signal.
Okay, and you're sure that I'm gonna say no?
If I'm sure that you're going to say no, I'll say no, and it is an equilibrium.
Okay.
Maybe not the one we want to focus on, but it is an equilibrium. So that equilibrium always.
Too much in some, this is a specific equilibrium we are looking for. It's
Yeah.
part of the specification of the equilibrium stopping.
Yes. It's an assumption, it's an equilibrium selection assumption. Right? You could, yeah, that's another way of Okay. Okay. So, under this assumption, essentially there's a unique solution to the dating problem, there's a unique cutoff, what we call it a breakup threshold. This Q star is what equates the multiple net value to 0.
The equation. So WS it depends on the strategy.
WS is endogenous, yeah.
So what is the
Which appears here, it is endogenous as well. One thing is, given the equilibrium, in equilibrium, there is a unique cutoff for every agent, actually two cutoffs for every agent, such that if agent X dates someone, let's say that agent X meets agent Y and starts dating, when the joint belief of the compatibility works with Q star of X, agent X will break up with agent Y. You need someone that's the joint belief is smaller than Q star of X, you will not even start dating that person. You will choose the dating time of 0. There are two cutoffs, of course, because, well, if you meet people from a different background, signals arrive at the rate beta lambda, and so the cutoff is Q star of X divided by 2. I want to point out that these breakup thresholds, they are independent of the partners at the partners attacking. It doesn't matter if I met Megan Merkel and we didn't get a positive signal for a year, or I met someone who's less attractive and we dated for a week and they didn't get a positive indication. We care about the posterior, not the prior. Okay?
Does depend on your own.
Yeah. So yes, of course. I'm all
Not only the type, not only background, also.
It depends on the attractiveness, and I have
Yeah,
two cut. Sorry.
No, but not only the background, also the W or not?
WS depends on my WS is essentially my outside option, right? It's the option value of being
So it
safe.
doesn't depend on the W, the objective W was.
Yes, you know that it's a function of W. W is a function of X of my attractiveness, and also my star as a result of the function of my own attractiveness. It's not a function of my background because then there are two cutoffs. You start divided by beta, one for people of my own background, one for people of different backgrounds. A different background. Okay, now we can define another threshold for every couple. There's an effective breakup threshold. This is just the maximum between these breakup thresholds. Right? We start dating. Once we get to the maximum between these two cutoffs, we break up. Now you can see that beta appears here only if I'm dating someone from a different background, and this I'll define it formally in one slide, but this will give us segregation. Essentially, when I'm dating someone from a different background, I'm going to break up with that person at a higher level. I'm not when we reach Q star divided by beta, I'll break up with that person. I'm not going to give that person the chance of having our joint belief with Q star. So let's define segregation. In order to do that, I want to define how much time do I have?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Just to be sure, the starting belief is endogenous.
Starting belief.
When someone meets someone else, starting belief is
It's exogenous. Depends on our types, but it is exogenous.
it depends on what, on the pool of singles or
No. Given if you take two partners,
yeah.
it depends only on their targets. But the probability of meeting another. Because it depends on the pool of singles, and as a result, the continuation values depend on the pool of singles, and as a result, the breakup threshold depends on the pool of singles. So everything depends on the pool of singles, but in an indirect way.
The initial belief is not.
Initial is only on the exactly. So I'm going to denote by alpha what I'm going to call the conversion rate of couple. What is the conversion rate? Well, it's the probability that X and Y will marry conditional on meeting one another. And I will say that there is segregation in equilibrium if the conversion rate is higher for couples who share the same background. I'm allowing for a weak inequality only for cases in which the conversion rates are zero regardless of whether we share the same background or not. If you think about someone who's very attractive and someone who's not attractive, and they won't date even if they share the same background, then it's okay to have both conversion rates at zero. And from this expression, one can see that we will have segregation in equilibrium. Actually, we can calculate these conversion rates. And because Q star is higher for agents who do not share the same background, we have segregation in equilibrium. The reason I'm showing you the expression for the conversion rate is not because I'm going to use it later, but just to show you that it is something that is relatively easy to work. It's a nice expression. Not very difficult to work. So what I'd like to show you, I have 15 more minutes, so I think that we're in good time. What I like to talk about is the connection between segregation and social welfare.
So I asked in the beginning, and now I need still need the intuition for why they wait longer with the similar backgrounds.
I didn't say they wait longer, I said I'm talking about beliefs, not about time. Okay, so let me
The belief changes over time when you don't get any.
but if we're not sharing the same background, the rate which they don't provide. Not, there's no one who wants.
It's usually that they wait for shorter time than what different background.
Depending on the power, if you think about the exponential distribution or concave and convex balance. So it's not necessarily shorter, it's not necessarily longer. But let me try and answer your question. So now I forgot the question. Okay, so up until here, I showed you that there are two Plato selections, right? One for people who share my own background, and one for people who come from a different background.
But that's smaller than one.
But it's smaller than one. Right? So when I start dating someone, I started at least you don't. If it's someone from a different background, once I reach Q star divided by beta, I break up with that person. We share the same background, that Q star divided by beta, I continue dating that person up until Q star. It doesn't mean that in the time dimension, I spend more time with that person because it takes me a shorter period of time to reach Q star divided by beta. But if you look at beliefs, then I invest more. I'm willing to spend with that person. I'm willing to spend my time with that person until our beliefs go to Q star rather than to Q star divided by beta. You're still skeptical, so
Half skeptical. It's okay. It's okay.
That's nice, because you leave people of the other background, even so you more probably fit them something.
yes, so
We give up because of the risk of something.
exactly because I have the option value of looking outside. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
that's what I meant by invest more. It's not time, it's if I invest my time.
Ideally, I would always date people of my background because then I get news faster and I can.
If I could choose, yes. That's a good intuition for something that I'm going to. I'm not sure I'm going to show. Maybe I wish I get one. I don't know.
We have actual examples in which they date longer than the opposite.
Simulations. Yes, we do. And would be ideal if we could pin it down and say it's always like this, it's always like this. Actually, this is something that we knew from before, but one of my co-authors and I, we have a different, not a social matching paper, but a paper about learning, consequence. I'm not sure if this was presented here or not. But it's the same learning problem, the single agent problem we know from that paper. Okay, so I wanted to say something about segregation and efficiency. Basically, what I want to say is that, well, there's a Pareto improvement, then there's more segregation. And I'll elaborate on that in a moment. But in order to say that there's more segregation, I need to define a concept that I call the segregation ratio. Essentially, it's the ratio between varying something between the conversion rate with agents of my own background and the conversion rate with agents from a different background. Right. And I'm going to say that there's more segregation if the conversion rate, if the segregation ratio increases 0.1. So let me tell you about this proposition, then I'll interpret it, and then I'll give you intuition. So let's fix the learning technology, beta and alpha. And let's say that we have two equilibria, E and E prime. If E Pareto dominates E prime, then the segregation ratios are higher for all types whenever they're well defined. Under one interpretation, comparison of two equilibria. We know from Bardet and Coles that there's no reason that the equilibrium need not be in. Now, another interpretation, not that I only fixed lambda and beta, I didn't fix anything else. You can think about it as comparative statistics. Let's say that we change mu, right? Faster search. If we get Pareto improvement, then we get more segregation. So you could think about comparative statistics. Let me give you intuition.
The proposition begs the question whether you ever get to it determination.
Well, I can tell you that in the limit we get. Take mu to infinity, we get. I can also tell you that if you think about equilibrium selection, I don't know what would happen with a continuous distribution, but if you have two types, you get one combination. Both of them for this complete distribution. So yes, you could find such a thing. Let me give you some graphical intuition. So let's say that we have a couple. They start at, I believe, Q naught. If they don't share the same background, they date until the belief problem Q star divided by beta, assuming there's no positive implication. They share the same background, they continue dating up until capital Q star. I'm going to call this region the joint dating region, LJ, because the couple dates regardless of background. And I'm going to call this region the segregated dating region, because here only couples share the same background. Now, if you think about this representation, the segregation ratio is essentially LJ plus LS divided by LJ. The conversion rate with someone from my own background divided by the conversion rate with someone from a different background. What happens when there's higher wealth? Pareto improvement. This means that everybody has a higher continuation value. If I have a high continuation value, I have a better outside option. Being single is better, right? Now, if this is the case, I'm going to be more picky. I'm going to raise my data threshold. I mean, all of us. This means that Q star increases. Now, what happens when Q star increases? This interval becomes short. Right? The joint dating region, LJ, becomes smaller. But what happens to the segregated dating region? Well, it actually becomes larger. So if LJ decreases and LS increases, we get higher segregation ratios. The effect on partners from different backgrounds is bigger.
Why this becomes smaller and this bigger?
Increase Q star. Q star divided by beta minus Q star is increasing.
Both of them.
No, this one is inflated, right?
Yeah.
When I increase Q star. What happens to this when I increase Q star? This one goes here and this becomes smaller.
You change beta?
No, I didn't. I fixed beta.
Both of them go right.
This becomes bigger, this becomes smaller, overall this becomes smaller, yeah, sure, but this one is
Not in the
bigger.
same proportion.
Yeah. Okay. So now I want us to talk about segregation and online data.
Okay, so not all three, one is the difference, the ratio is difference between Q0 and less divided by Q, right? So alpha, how is alpha defined? Here.
All right, so segregation and online data. An immediate corollary of the previous report is that improvement in online data technology that is support improvement must also increase segregation. But we know from Antler and Taki that an improvement in the search
It's
technology.
just not from the whole proposition, because when you change data technology, you change the game. Whereas the proposition refers to two equilibrium in the same game.
Only another fix you can move new as you want.
But it's an equilibrium in one game.
Take fix a set of parameters. Take an equilibrium. Okay. Now decide whether you want to change the bar, except for the dynamic. I'm not allowing you to change the dynamic. You can change the other, essentially you can change R and U. These are the parameters.
So E prime like equilibrium in different games.
Could be in different games, could be in the same game. And there are two interpretations. So an improvement that increases welfare must also increase segregation. Fine, this is immediate. But what happens when mu increases? We know from Antler and Taki that it doesn't mean that everybody is better. This is well known. Well, no. But when search frictions vanish, right, a sufficiently large improvement, then everybody is better, at least in the standard set. Here, when search frictions vanish, this is related to organic intuition, there's full segregation. People only marry people who share their own family. The idea is very simple, right? If I meet someone from a different background, but even if we're compatible, it's going to take time to discover that. It's going to take more time relative to dating someone of my own background. If I could switch, I would do that. Now, there are search frictions, and I need to wait for a person of my own background. I might give a chance to someone from a different background, but when search becomes very fast, and I know that I can immediately replace that person with someone from my own background, well,
This is true also from your own background. The equilibrium will be me and someone and go forward go until you meet someone.
can you wait one second? Good intuition, but yes, one second. The Atlantic calls it the dating apocalypse, but it's another interpretation. Yes. So full segregation in the limit. Good intuition, right? So a series of articles in the Atlantic describe the dating apocalypse. Individuals invest very little in each partner. They take many partners before settling down. It's really easy to find someone today, but very difficult to find someone to marry. In our model, in the limits, essentially agents are willing to date only agents of their own attractiveness and above. Right? So if you think about the breakup threshold, this is just the prior of me being compatible to someone with my own attractiveness. This means that when I meet someone, that person is more attractive than me, then that person is going to reject me. That person is less attractive than me, I'm going to reject that person. If we're at the same attractiveness level, we start dating, and unless a signal arrives immediately, we're going to break up with each other. Why? Because don't use it
Why
values.
that?
Don't use it values. Now I'm more pessimistic about that person, and I can immediately replace that person with someone else for the same attractiveness level, for which I didn't get a negative indication. So
what are the welfare consequences? Is that good or bad?
actually, it's good. It's good. Then actually, we can calculate it. It's as if you're always learning until you find.
An apocalypse in the positive sense.
And depending if you ask an economist or the Atlantic.
But it's only one equilibrium, right? Because why Why equilibrium? It must be that you live immediately someone who is more than you or less than you. Is more attractive.
If it's more,
He's less attractive than you.
is less attractive than me,
Yeah,
I can replace that person with someone who's as attractive as me immediately.
but this is an assumption about equilibrium. Everyone accepts.
No, it's not.
If, for example, in equilibrium, everyone wants to. Okay.
Under the assumptions we made before, this is the unique equilibrium. Of course, good sustain equilibrium, which I don't date people who name starts with A. There could be such an equilibrium, but under our assumptions, this is the unique.
This happened with zero why isn't defined in equilibrium? No one ever creates anything, so the equilibrium. So my mistake.
This is not.
But still, you,
For them, in the sense.
but still, you have a problem of measure theory. About how to define.
So they
How to define this equilibrium because you don't know how much time to wait, right? You have to wait less than any epsilon positive epsilon.
So there's a technical issue of showing that the market does not dry up, and because of the limits, take you back to the Phelps technology. Don't have time to get into the physical.
I don't think it's my point. The point is that when you meet someone, you don't have a specific time to wait. You have to leave him immediately after epsilon time because your belief immediately goes down. So you have to somehow fix it.
You have to assume the right continuity. I need to look at the book because I don't have a good answer for you at
That's
this
it.
moment.
So
Yeah.
solution concept you always assume that there is some possibility that the partner will not be committed.
That's one way to get works. This is something that gives us but I don't care about that point of view. Alternatively, one could assume that there are small travels. That's an alternative, but it's not what we're doing. This is just more standard, not because it's better, it's just that's the standard. Now I see that I have 2 minutes, so I want to try and conclude. I'm not going to do everything, of course. So what else do we do? Some advertising, segregation and attracting in the real world. Segregation is increasing in attractiveness. In our model 2, if it's not too high, if it's too high, then you have full segregation. Sorting, as I told you, it's a big thing in the literature. Typically, in the Becker's sense, sorting was, well, they found a higher type, I made higher types. When there's search, obviously you don't marry only one type, so usually think about an interval of types that you marry, and positive sorting means domination in the strong sense, order sense. Here, it is meaningless, so we need to come up with a new definition of positive sorting, a probabilistic definition, provide conditionals under this definition. And the nice thing is that if we look at the data, actually the real data over here, in the US, under the interpretation of attractiveness of education, well, might be problematic. We get the same signal crossing in LH probabilities that we get here under supermodality. I think it's nice. You think so? I can talk about it later. Positive sorting is not necessarily efficient. And I think that it's a good time. So these are future research.